Imagine with me for a moment that there is something you really want. Perhaps you have wanted it for a long time. You think about it. You talk about it. You say, I hope this happens. I hope I can do this. I hope someday this will be mine. Well, hope is lovely, but sometimes hope can leave you standing in the same place, waiting and wondering. There comes a moment when you say, all right, this is what I choose, and something changes. You see, wanting and deciding are not quite the same thing. Wanting says, maybe. Deciding says, this is the direction I am willing to take now. You do not have to become forceful. You do not have to demand anything from life. You simply become clearer within yourself. I move from wishing into choosing. Perhaps you have been wishing for a different kind of work. Fine. Perhaps you have been wishing for more creativity, more peace, more money, a healthier relationship, or a kinder relationship with your own body. Whatever it is, ask yourself, have I only been wishing for this, or have I actually chosen it? Sometimes we keep ourselves in the wishing stage because choosing feels more real. If I only wish, I can continue imagining. If I choose, then I may have to take a step. I may have to make a phone call. I may have to learn something. I may have to stop doing something that no longer fits. I may have to say yes. I may have to say no. And that can feel uncomfortable. Fine. Discomfort does not mean you are making the wrong choice. It may simply mean you are doing something differently. A decision gives your energy somewhere to go. Perhaps you say, I want to write a book. Wonderful. But every week you ask yourself again, do I really want to do this? Am I good enough? Is this the right time? And then another week passes. Well, perhaps the question does not need another answer. Perhaps you already answered it. Yes, I want to write the book. Fine. Then today, you write one page. You see how simple that becomes? Once the decision is made, the mind no longer has to spend so much energy asking the same question again and again. The same can happen with self-love. You say, I want to treat myself better. Good. Then perhaps the decision becomes, I choose to stop speaking to myself cruelly. And the next time you make a mistake and the old voice says, you're hopeless, you catch it. No, we are not doing that anymore. Then you choose another thought. Perhaps I am learning. Perhaps I can try again. This is how a decision begins to become real, not through one enormous moment, but through little moments where you remember what you chose. And I want to say something very important here. You do not have to feel completely certain before you decide. People often think confidence must come first. When I feel sure, then I will begin. Well, sometimes you may wait a very long time. Very often, certainty comes later. You make the decision. You take a small step, then another. And after a while, you begin to say, oh, I can do this. That is how trust grows. Think about anything you now know how to do easily. At one time, you did not know. Perhaps driving a car, cooking a certain meal, using a computer, speaking another language, doing your work. At the beginning, you may have felt awkward. You had to think about every little thing. Then you practiced again and again. And now much of it feels natural. You did not wait until you felt like an expert before beginning. You became more confident because you began. So perhaps today you can say, I do not wait for certainty. I create it through commitment. And if that feels a little too strong, soften it. Say, I am willing to become more certain by keeping the promises I make to myself. I like that. It is gentle. It is believable. Every time you keep a little promise, you begin trusting yourself a little more. Perhaps you say, tomorrow morning I will spend 15 minutes on this. Then you do it. Good. That is one little piece of trust. I will take a walk after lunch. You do it. Another piece. I will call that person. You call. Another piece. I will put aside a little money this week. You do it. Another piece. These may look very small, but this is how inner certainty grows. You begin believing yourself because you see yourself following through. And please do not make the promise so large that it frightens you. We have a tendency to say, from now on, I will do this perfectly every single day. Well, that can create a great deal of pressure. Why not make a smaller promise, a loving promise, one you can actually keep? For today, I will give this 20 minutes. Fine, do that. Tomorrow, you can decide again. You see, life does not always require a dramatic leap. Very often, it asks for a clear choice and one little step, then another little step. And each step shows you something you could not have known while standing still. This is why I do not think we need to have all the evidence before we begin. Sometimes the evidence comes because we begin. Perhaps you are considering a new kind of work. You may not know whether it will become your lifelong career. Fine. You do not need to know that today. Take one class. Speak to one person who does that work. Try one small project. Let life give you information through experience. Perhaps you want a more loving relationship. You do not need to know exactly who will appear or when. Begin by choosing what love means to you now. Honesty, respect, kindness, mutual care. Then begin living those qualities yourself. Become clearer about what you will welcome and what you will no longer accept. This is where choosing becomes very different from forcing. You do not say, this must happen exactly the way I have imagined. No, you say, this is the direction I choose, and I am willing to participate. Then you leave some room for life. You make your choice, you take your little steps, and you allow life to show you what can come next. I think this is very important because sometimes people hear decision and become very hard with themselves. I decided, so now I must never doubt. No, doubt may still come. Fine. A thought is only a thought. You can have a doubtful thought without changing your whole direction. Perhaps the mind says, what if this does not work? You can answer, I don't know yet. I am learning. Then continue. You do not have to reopen the entire decision every time fear speaks. Imagine deciding to plant a little garden and then digging up the seeds every morning because you are not sure they will grow. They do not get much chance that way. Sometimes a decision needs a little time, a little care, a little repetition. You choose, you water, you wait, you learn. That is enough. And perhaps other people will have opinions. They often do. You say, I have decided to try something new. And someone says, are you sure? Well, maybe you are not completely sure. That is all right. You can say, I am willing to find out. You do not need another person to carry your confidence for you. They have their own thoughts. You have yours. This is where I like the simple sentence, I am sure enough to begin. Not sure enough to predict the next 10 years. Sure enough to begin. There is so much relief in that. You do not need a guarantee. You need willingness. And as you begin, notice how your attention changes. Once you have made a clear decision, you begin noticing things connected to it. Perhaps you see a book that can help you. Perhaps someone mentions a useful idea. Perhaps you notice an opportunity you would have ignored before. Perhaps you begin asking different questions. Life may have contained these things before, but now you are more available to see them because you know what you are looking toward. This is what I mean when I say that what you decide may also begin making its way toward you. I do not mean that you sit still and expect life to deliver everything to the front door. No. You participate, you choose, you move, and as you become clearer, you begin meeting possibilities differently. Clarity helps you recognize what belongs with your choice. Perhaps you decide that you want more peace. Suddenly you notice how noisy certain habits are. You notice which conversations leave you exhausted. You notice how good 10 quiet minutes feel. Perhaps you decide that you want to create something. You begin seeing ideas everywhere. Perhaps you decide that you are ready for healthier relationships. You start noticing the difference between attention and respect. The decision changes what you are willing to notice. So today, do not ask yourself to make 10 decisions. Choose one. What is something you have been wishing for that you are ready to move toward more clearly? Perhaps you say, I choose to take better care of myself. I choose to complete this project. I choose to become more honest. I choose to create more financial stability. I choose to make room for love. Whatever it is, let it be yours. Then ask, what is one little action that agrees with this choice? One action. That is all. I move from wishing into choosing. I am sure enough to begin. I do not wait for certainty. I allow certainty to grow as I keep my word to myself. And then begin. A little bit today, a little bit tomorrow. No punishment if you wobble. No drama if you miss a day. Come back. You see, coming back to a decision is part of keeping it. And this is where our next conversation begins. Because once you become clearer about what you choose, something else starts changing. The way you look at opportunities, the people and ideas you notice, the actions you are willing to take, and the amount of life you are able to receive. In the next part, we will explore how a clear decision begins to create a new relationship between you and the possibilities already moving around you. I want to share something with you that can make your goals feel much more loving and much more believable. Sometimes we choose a goal that is so small, it does not really wake anything up inside us. We say, well, maybe I'll do a little better, and there is no energy in it. Then other times, we choose something so far away from where we are that the mind immediately says, oh no, that could never happen for me. And then we wonder why we cannot stay connected to it. So perhaps there is another place, a middle place, what I like to call the sweet spot. It is a goal that stretches you, but it does not make you feel as though you have to become a completely different person overnight. It gives you something to look forward to, but it also gives the mind enough room to say, yes, perhaps I can do this. I choose goals that stretch me without disconnecting me from belief. I think this is very important because you do not have to frighten yourself into growth. You do not need a goal so enormous that every time you look at it, you feel behind before you have even begun. And you do not need a goal so small that it never asks anything new of you. You are looking for that lovely place where there is both excitement and a little belief. Perhaps you say, I want to write a book, and the whole book feels too big today. Fine. What could the sweet spot be? Perhaps finishing the first chapter this month. That may still feel exciting, but the mind can begin to imagine it. Or perhaps you want to improve your financial life. I want to become wealthy. May feel very far away if you are worried about money right now. So perhaps the sweet spot is, I am going to create my first month of consistent savings. You see, you have not reduced the dream. You have brought the next part close enough to touch. And this is where I want you to be very kind with yourself, because people often make goals into another place for self-criticism. They choose something enormous cannot sustain the intensity and then say, "See, I never follow through." No, my dear, perhaps the goal was not designed lovingly. Perhaps you asked your current self to leap over too many steps at once. Why not build a bridge? This is where bridge thoughts and bridge goals can be so useful. You do not have to say, "I am completely confident," if you are not. You can say, "I am becoming more confident." You do not have to say, "I will transform my whole life this month." You can say, "This month I will create one new pattern that supports me." The mind likes something it can practice. It likes evidence. It likes repetition. And when you give it a goal that feels both meaningful and possible, you begin to cooperate with yourself instead of fighting yourself. The sweet spot is not where you stay comfortable forever. It is where you can grow without losing contact with trust. Perhaps the goal makes you a little nervous. Fine. A little nervousness can simply mean that you are moving beyond what is familiar. But if every part of you is screaming, "Impossible," perhaps bring the goal closer, not because you are giving up, but because you are creating a path that the mind can actually walk. Think about learning anything new. You do not begin with the most advanced lesson. You begin where you are. A child learning to read does not start with a complicated novel and then decide they are stupid because they cannot understand it. They learn a word, then a sentence, then a page. Why should your own growth be any different? If you want to become more disciplined, perhaps your first promise is small. If you want to become stronger, perhaps your first practice is gentle. If you want to build a business, perhaps the first goal is not, "I must become enormously successful immediately." Perhaps it is, "I will create one offer and learn from the response." You see, life teaches us through steps. I choose goals that stretch me without disconnecting me from belief. Perhaps say it again and notice where the body softens. The word stretch is there, so we are not avoiding growth. But the word belief is there too, so we are not abandoning ourselves in the process. And then we come to small wins, because this is how belief becomes stronger. So many people wait for one great breakthrough. They say, "When the big thing happens, then I will know I can trust myself." But why wait? You can begin collecting evidence today. Perhaps you finish one step you have delayed. That is evidence. You keep one little promise for 3 days. Evidence. You send the email you have been thinking about for 2 weeks. Evidence. You make the appointment. Evidence. You finish the page. Evidence. You speak up. Evidence. These things may look ordinary, but the mind notices them. Every time you follow through, even in a small way, you begin teaching yourself, "Oh, I can depend on me. I am becoming someone who follows through." Not, "I am perfect." Not, "I never get distracted." Simply, "I am becoming someone who follows through." And please, When you complete something, acknowledge it. We are very quick to move the finish line. You do one difficult thing and immediately say, "Yes, but I still have 10 more." No, stop for a moment. Say, "Good, I did that." You do not need a parade. You do not need to make it dramatic. Just let the mind register success. I said I would do it, and I did. That is how evidence becomes internal. If you never acknowledge the small wins, the mind continues believing nothing is happening. So perhaps at the end of the day, ask, what did I follow through on today? Maybe it is very simple. You drank the water. You answered the difficult email. You worked for 20 minutes instead of avoiding the project completely. Fine, let it count. Small wins teach the nervous system and the mind that movement is possible. And as these small wins accumulate, the larger goal begins to feel less foreign. Imagine placing one stone after another across a little stream. The first stone does not get you to the other side. The second does not either. But after enough stones, there is a path. This is what small wins do. You do not need one giant leap. You need enough evidence to begin trusting the direction. Perhaps you want to become a writer. One day of writing does not make the whole career, but one page, then another, begins creating an identity that says, "I write." Perhaps you want to become healthier. One walk does not transform everything, but one walk repeated creates a new relationship with the body. Perhaps you want to become more financially responsible. One careful choice is not the entire answer, but it is evidence that another pattern is possible. I am becoming someone who follows through. Let this be a warm sentence, not a demanding one. And if you miss a day, please do not throw away all the evidence. This is another habit that keeps people stuck. They do something consistently for 2 weeks, miss one day, and say, "I knew I couldn't do it." Well, that is not true. You did it for 2 weeks. That evidence still exists. Perhaps the loving response is, "Fine, I missed today. I return tomorrow." You see, following through does not mean never wobbling. It means you come back. That is a much more useful kind of commitment. Consistency is not perfection. Consistency is return. And every return is another win too. This is where decision begins to move you from force into flow. Before the decision is clear, you may feel that you have to keep pushing yourself all the time. Should I do this? Should I not? Is this right? Am I doing enough? What if I change my mind? There is so much noise. Then once you decide, some of that noise can fall away. You say, "This is my direction for now." Fine. Now you can act without creating a new drama around every step. I move with commitment, not desperation. Commitment is quiet. Desperation keeps checking. Commitment says, "I am doing my part." Desperation says, Is it working yet? Is it happening yet? Did I do enough today? What if I am falling behind? You see the difference? One has movement, the other has pressure. Suppose you decide to create something. Desperation checks the numbers every hour. Did anybody see it? Did anybody respond? Is it successful yet? Commitment says, today I will make the next part as well as I can. Then you let the result breathe a little. Suppose you decide to improve your health. Desperation looks in the mirror every day asking whether the body has changed enough. Commitment says, I will keep making supportive choices. Suppose you decide to improve a relationship. Desperation wants reassurance after every conversation. Commitment says, I will practice honesty, kindness, and boundaries consistently. Flow does not mean nothing matters. Flow means you stop strangling what matters with constant checking. And perhaps this is one of the most loving things you can do with a decision. Give it enough time to become something. We live in a culture that loves immediate evidence. We want the result now. But many beautiful things grow slowly. A skill grows slowly. Trust grows slowly. A creative project grows slowly. Financial stability may grow slowly. Confidence grows slowly. And slow does not mean nothing is happening. Perhaps the mind needs to hear, we have chosen, now we practice. That is very calming. You no longer wake up every morning needing to recreate the decision from nothing. I move with commitment, not desperation. Say that slowly. Commitment has room to breathe. It does not mean you become lazy. In fact, you may become more consistent because you are using less energy on worry. You know what you are doing, so you do it. You know what matters, so you return to it. There is less emotional drama around the action. Perhaps you even begin enjoying the process because you are no longer treating every day as a test of whether the dream will come true. This is where flow becomes practical. People sometimes think flow means everything is easy. No, you can be in flow and still work hard. You can be in flow and still solve problems. You can be in flow and still have a difficult day. Flow means the energy is not constantly fighting itself. You have chosen the direction, and your actions are beginning to agree with that direction. When the work is needed, you work. When rest is needed, you rest. When new information appears, you adjust. You do not confuse flexibility with failure. Perhaps you set a goal for 3 months and discover after 6 weeks that part of the plan needs changing. Fine. Change the method, not necessarily the direction. You wanted to become stronger, but the routine you chose does not suit your body. Adjust it. You wanted to finish a project, but the original schedule was unrealistic. Adjust it. You wanted more peace, but one practice did not help. Try another. Commitment to the direction does not require attachment to one method. This is another place where force can become flow. Force says, it must happen exactly this way. Flow says, the direction matters. I can learn how to get there. And I think this is where life begins to feel more cooperative. You decide, you act, you notice, you adjust. Then something appears that you could not have planned. A new idea, a useful person, a different opportunity. Perhaps the goal itself becomes clearer. You thought you wanted one thing, but through movement, you discover what you really wanted underneath it. Fine. This is not failure. This is refinement. Action gives life something to respond to. When you move, you create contact. Contact gives information. Information helps you choose more wisely. Perhaps your original goal was to become famous. Then, as you begin creating, you realize what you really love is meaningful expression, good, that is useful. Perhaps you wanted a certain job because you thought it meant success, but through exploration you discover that what you truly want is freedom. Good. Now the direction becomes more honest. Perhaps you wanted one exact relationship to work, but through experience you realize what you truly long for is mutual love and emotional safety. Good. You see, the sweet spot may even change as you grow. That is why goals should support life, not become another prison. A goal is a direction, not a definition of your worth. If you reach it, you are not suddenly more worthy. If you need to adjust it, you have not failed. You are already worthy while you are learning what fits you. The goal is here to help you move, not to give you permission to love yourself. So perhaps today you look at one goal and ask, is this in my sweet spot? Does it excite you at least a little? Can you imagine yourself taking real steps toward it? If it feels dead, perhaps it is too small or no longer meaningful. If it feels so impossible that you immediately shut down, perhaps bring it closer. Find the next version you can believe. You can always expand later. Then ask, what small win would give me evidence this week? One win. Perhaps finish one page. Make one call. Send one email. Keep one habit for 5 days. Complete one thing you have been putting off. Let the win be specific enough that you know when it is done. And when you do it, say, I am becoming someone who follows through. Let yourself feel the truth of it for a moment. Do not rush immediately to the next task. Register it. Then ask, can I do this without desperation? Perhaps you do not need to check the result every hour. Perhaps you do not need to compare your progress with another person's. Perhaps you do not need to constantly ask whether you are doing enough. You can say, I have chosen. I am participating. I can let this unfold. This is such a different way of pursuing something. You are still ambitious if ambition matters to you. You are still committed. You are still active. But your energy is not saying, I must get this, or I am not enough. Your energy is saying, this matters to me, so I am going to give it loving attention. That is a much healthier place to create from. And perhaps the most surprising thing is that when you stop chasing from desperation, you often become more effective. You notice more, you listen better, you make better decisions. You are less likely to abandon the goal because one day went badly. You can see the next step more clearly because fear is not filling the whole room. This is where I want you to remember the 3 ideas together. First, choose the sweet spot, something that stretches you without making belief disappear. Second, collect small wins. Let the mind see that you can follow through. Third, move with commitment rather than desperation. Do your part and let the path have some breathing room. Perhaps say them in your own way now. I choose something I can believe in. I take the next step. I notice my progress. I keep going without pushing myself into panic. That is enough. And if you have been setting goals that make you feel constantly inadequate, perhaps today you can create a more loving goal, one that still asks something of you, but does not insult the person you are right now. You see, you are not beginning from zero. You already have experience. You already have strengths. You already have evidence of things you have learned and completed. Build from there. Perhaps the sweet spot for you is larger than you think. Maybe you have been making your goals too small because you are afraid to want more. Fine, then stretch a little. Ask, what would excite me if I believed I were allowed to try? Perhaps there is more desire there than you have admitted. Let yourself feel it, then bring it into a form you can work with. Or perhaps the sweet spot needs to be gentler. Maybe you have been demanding too much because you think bigger goals make you more worthy. No, a realistic goal is not a small life. A realistic next step can be the beginning of a very large life. I choose goals that stretch me without disconnecting me from belief. I am becoming someone who follows through. I move with commitment, not desperation. These 3 thoughts work beautifully together. The first gives you a believable direction. The second builds trust through action. The third helps you continue without exhausting yourself. And as you practice them, you may begin noticing something else. The more faithfully you move toward what you have chosen, the less you need to chase certainty outside yourself. You begin trusting the relationship you are building with your own word. You say, I choose this, and then you see yourself showing up. That creates a quieter confidence, not loud confidence, not the kind that needs everyone to agree, just the confidence that says, I know what I am doing today, and that is enough. Perhaps tomorrow you will know a little more. Perhaps the path will reveal something new. Perhaps an unexpected opportunity will meet the direction you have chosen. Perhaps the thing you are moving toward will begin to look as though it is moving toward you too. And that is where we will go next. How a clear decision begins to change what you notice, what you allow, what you respond to, and how life can begin meeting you differently once your direction becomes steady. And once you have made a real decision, there is another loving discipline that becomes very important. Stop reopening the vote every single day. If every morning you ask, do I still want this? Maybe I should quit. Maybe I should change direction. Maybe today I feel differently. Then the decision never has enough time to become rooted. You see, feelings move, moods move, energy move. One day you feel inspired, the next day you feel tired. And if every temporary emotion gets to rewrite the direction of your life, you will spend a great deal of time beginning again. So perhaps you say, I do not renegotiate with every temporary emotion. That does not mean you become rigid. If important new information appears, of course you can reconsider. If something is clearly unhealthy or no longer true for you, you can choose again. But you do not reopen the entire question simply because today is harder than yesterday. Sometimes a decision needs the dignity of being allowed to remain a decision. Think about how exhausting it is to keep asking yourself the same thing. Should I continue? Do I really mean it? Is this still right? Well, perhaps you already answered. Perhaps the answer was yes. Then today's work is not to hold another meeting inside your head. Today's work is to take the next step. This is where commitment becomes peaceful. You stop creating drama around every fluctuation. You say, I chose this direction. Today I am tired, and I can still take one small step. Or, today I feel uncertain, and I do not need uncertainty to make the decision for me. A passing feeling can be listened to without being placed in charge. That is a very different relationship with yourself, and your words need to support the decision you have made. This is important because sometimes the action says one thing while the language keeps saying another. You decide to build something, but every day you say, I'm trying. You decide to become more consistent, but you keep repeating, I always quit. You decide to learn, but you say, I hope I can do it. These old sentences keep the old identity alive. So perhaps the language becomes simpler and more aligned. I am building this. I am learning how to do this better. I continue. You do not need to exaggerate. You do not have to say, I am already the greatest success in the world. No, just speak in a way that agrees with the direction you have chosen. My words support the direction I have chosen. And perhaps even more importantly, I speak as someone who is committed to my future. Notice how different that feels. I am trying to write has a very tentative energy. I am writing this book has a different tone. You may still be at page 1, fine, but you are no longer talking as though the whole thing might evaporate tomorrow. I'm trying to take care of myself can become, I am learning to care for myself more consistently. I hope I stop giving up can become, I return when I wobble. Language matters because the mind is always listening. The way you speak about yourself becomes part of the atmosphere in which the decision is trying to grow. And then there is your environment. You see, we sometimes make a beautiful decision and then keep living inside an environment that constantly makes the decision harder. You decide to write, but the notebook is buried somewhere and the desk is covered with things that have nothing to do with writing. You decide to eat more supportively, but everything around you keeps inviting the old habit. You decide to focus, but the phone is beside you all day, lighting up every few minutes. Then you say, "Why am I not disciplined enough?" Well, perhaps discipline is not the only issue. Perhaps the environment is giving the old pattern too much help. So make the new choice easier to live. Put what you need where you can see it. If you want to read, put the book where your hand naturally reaches. If you want to write, prepare the space before the writing time. If you want to remember something, leave a visible reminder. Remove one distraction. Close one unnecessary door. I create an environment that makes my new choices easier to live. This is not cheating. This is wisdom. You do not have to prove your strength by making every good choice unnecessarily difficult. And people are part of the environment too. This does not mean you must only be around people who agree with every decision you make, but notice who respects your direction and who constantly pulls you back toward the old version of yourself. Perhaps you are trying to become more focused, and every conversation with a certain person becomes an hour of distraction. Perhaps you are building confidence, and someone repeatedly mocks every new effort. Perhaps you are creating something important, and you keep sharing it with people who immediately pour doubt on it. You do not need to make them wrong. You can simply become more selective about what you bring into certain relationships. Not everybody needs access to every new direction while it is still becoming strong. The same is true of information. What are you feeding the mind? If you decide to build something and then spend hours consuming content that tells you why everything is impossible, you are creating unnecessary friction. Choose information that helps you learn what you need to learn. Choose voices that make you more clear, not more scattered. Choose material that supports skill, courage, patience, and practical understanding. This is not about creating a fantasy world where you never hear disagreement. It is about feeding the direction enough nourishment to grow. And then we come to something very practical. A real decision needs somewhere to live in time. If it exists only in the mind, it can remain very beautiful and very unreal. So ask yourself, where does this decision live in my calendar? I love that question because it brings the dream down into ordinary life. You say, I decided to learn. Fine. When? Monday evening? Saturday morning? How long? 30 minutes? You decide to write. Fine. Which days? What time? You decide to improve your finances. Fine. When will you look at them? You decide to exercise. Fine. Where does that happen? You see, putting a decision into the calendar is not making it less spiritual. It is how you give the decision a body. It says, I am not only thinking about this, I am making room for it. And perhaps the first appointment is very small. Good. Small is real. 20 minutes at 9 o'clock is more powerful than someday I will spend more time on this. Someday has no address. Tuesday at 9 does. And please do not fill the entire week with a new decision until there is no room to breathe. Again, we are creating something sustainable. Perhaps 3 focused periods are enough. Perhaps 1. Your calendar is not a place to punish yourself. It is a place to show what matters enough to receive time. This is also where you stop deciding only the outcome and begin deciding how you will show up. People say, I decide to be successful. Fine. But success is not entirely under your control. What is under your control is the way you participate. Perhaps you decide, I will be consistent. I will learn. I will ask better questions. I will return after a difficult day. I will adjust instead of abandoning the whole thing. I decide how I will show up, not only what I want to receive. This is such a loving shift because it moves your power back into the present. You cannot command every outcome, but you can decide that when the day is difficult, you will not immediately disappear. You can decide that when you make a mistake, you will learn rather than attack yourself. You can decide that when something does not work, you will try another method. You can decide that you will remain curious. These decisions are portable. They go with you no matter what the external result does. Suppose you decide to build a business. You cannot control how quickly people buy, but you can decide how you will show up consistently, honestly, willing to learn, willing to improve. Suppose you decide to create a healthier relationship. You cannot control another person's behavior, but you can decide to communicate clearly, respect yourself, listen, and notice reality. Suppose you decide to improve your health. You cannot control every variable, but you can decide to care, to learn, to return, to be patient. This is where commitment becomes trustworthy because it is built around choices you can actually make. And something interesting begins to happen. Once your direction becomes clearer, you start noticing things that fit it. This is very ordinary and also very beautiful. If you decide to learn photography, suddenly you notice photography classes, cameras, lighting, people who know more than you. If you decide to create more peace, you begin noticing which spaces calm you, which habits disturb you, which conversations feel noisy. If you decide to build something creative, ideas begin standing out. because the mind now knows they are relevant. The world may not have suddenly changed overnight. Your attention has become more available to what supports the decision. In spiritual language, this can feel as though life is beginning to meet you in the same direction. Perhaps you decide, and then a useful person appears. You make a commitment, and then an opportunity catches your eye. You begin building, and suddenly information you needed becomes visible. It can feel very synchronistic, and that can be lovely. But remember, you still walk toward it. You still send the email. You still ask the question. You still show up. As I commit to my direction, I become more available to what supports it. That is a beautiful way to hold both things: openness to life and responsibility for your own steps. You see, when your decision is unclear, useful things may pass by unnoticed because the mind does not know what they mean. Once the direction becomes clear, they become easier to recognize. The opportunity was a possibility. Now you are prepared to see why it matters. The person was there. Now you know what question to ask. The information existed. Now you are looking for it. Clarity makes you a better participant. And now I want to give you a very simple practice called Decide and Align. Take a piece of paper if you like. Write one sentence beginning with, I decide. Keep it simple. I decide to finish this project. I decide to build more financial stability. I decide to care for my body more consistently. I decide to make room for my creativity. One decision. Then ask yourself, what is the sweet spot? What version of this goal feels both exciting and believable? Perhaps the final dream is very large. Fine. What is the next meaningful level you can actually relate to? Write that down. Then choose one small win you can complete within the next 24 hours. Not someday, within a day. One email, one page, one appointment, 1 hour scheduled, one object prepared, one piece of information gathered, something real. When you finish it, acknowledge it. Then look around your environment. Ask, what one thing can I add that supports this? Perhaps the book on the desk, the shoes by the door, the calendar reminder, the notebook open and ready. Then ask, what one thing can I remove? One distracting tab, one notification, one object that constantly pulls you somewhere else. Do not redesign your whole life. One addition, one subtraction. Then choose the affirmation that belongs with the decision. My decision, my words, my actions, and my environment now move in the same direction. Let that be the alignment. You do not have to feel extraordinary. You are simply reducing the contradiction between what you say you want and the way you are living today. And perhaps after a week, you ask, is this helping? If new information appears, adjust. If not, continue. But do not hold another election every morning. Let the decision gather some history. Let it have a chance to become familiar. I do not renegotiate with every temporary emotion. Perhaps Monday you feel strong, Tuesday you feel bored, Wednesday you doubt, Thursday you enjoy it again, Friday you feel tired. Look at all those emotions. Which one should control the whole future? None of them. They are weather. The decision is the direction you chose while you were clear enough to choose. Of course, sometimes repeated discomfort is information. Perhaps after several weeks you realize the direction does not fit at all. Then listen. We are not asking for blind persistence, but there is a difference between meaningful information and a passing mood. With practice, you learn to tell them apart. This is why it can help to decide in advance when you will review the goal, perhaps once a month. Then the mind knows we have a time to evaluate. I do not have to do it every afternoon. What a relief. During the month, you practice. At the review, you look honestly. What is working? What needs adjusting? Does the direction still matter? This gives doubt a place without letting doubt run the day. And as your language changes, the new decision becomes more familiar. You stop saying, I hope I manage. You say, I am learning. You stop saying, I always give up. You say, I return. You stop saying, I'm trying to become this person. You say, I am building this pattern now. My words support the direction I have chosen. Then your environment begins supporting it. Your time supports it. Your small actions support it. And little by little, you feel less divided. This is what alignment feels like. It is not a mystical state where nothing ever goes wrong. It is simply the relief of no longer sending yourself in opposite directions all day. The mind says yes. The calendar says yes. The environment says yes. The words say yes. And the actions begin saying yes too. That creates momentum, and you may begin to notice that you no longer need the same amount of motivation. The practice starts becoming normal. The decision becomes less exciting, perhaps, but more real. And real is what we wanted. A decision does not need to remain emotionally exciting forever in order to remain alive. Some of the most important decisions eventually become quiet habits. This is where the title of our conversation becomes interesting. When you make a clear decision and begin aligning with it, it can feel as though what you decided is also beginning to make its way toward you. You notice more support. You become easier for opportunities to find because you are actually participating. You become more prepared to recognize what fits. You begin meeting the right information at the right stage, not because life has become your servant, but because you and life are no longer moving in completely different directions. As I commit to my direction, I become more available to what supports it. That word available matters. You may have wanted something for years but not been available to it. You wanted opportunity but never applied. You wanted connection but always hid. You wanted creative work but never gave it time. You wanted change but reopened the decision every time discomfort appeared. Now availability looks different. You make space. You show up. You respond. And then perhaps life has more room to meet you. So before we finish, I want you to ask yourself one question. What is something I have been saying I want for a long time that I am ready to turn into a decision today? Do not choose what you think sounds impressive. Choose what is true. Perhaps you already know. Then write, I decide. Fill in the sentence. Find the sweet spot. Choose the 24-hour win. Make one change to the environment. Put one appointment into the calendar. Choose how you will show up. And then stop voting. Let yourself live the decision for a while. If you are ready, write in the comments, I have decided. Not because writing a comment creates the life for you, but because naming the decision can mark the moment when wishing becomes choosing. And let these words become your closing thought. I choose clearly. I commit lovingly. I take the next believable step. My mind, energy, words, and actions move together. And I become increasingly available to the life I have decided to create. You do not need to force the whole future into existence tonight. You do not need to know every answer. You do not need to feel certain every morning. Choose, align, take the next step, and then let life show you what becomes visible when you stop standing at the doorway wondering whether you really want to enter.